We have both the moderator and our guest for the next Fire Chat coming up. As the moderator, we have Ivan Levingston, who is a tech reporter for Bloomberg that covers technology and VC across Europe. And he's going to talk with Kristo, the co-founder and CEO of Wise. And Wise is a global technology company building the best way to move money around the world. In 2015, Kristo was selected as one of the World Economic Forum technology pioneers. So we have a lot of legacy here on the stage. Enjoy the chat. Gentlemen, please come on our stage and give them a hand of applause.
Should I send to you?
Please.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone, and we're very lucky and grateful to have Kristo with us this morning.
Good to be here. Hey, Brussels.
I think so. Wise, many people know as TransferWise. Today, over 10 years old. I thought a good place to start would be looking back a little bit, actually. If you're able to recall what some of the key decisions were early on that led you to build such a resilient company.
Is that a question?
That's the question. What were the key decisions from 10 years ago that you're thankful for today?
Oh wow, there's a lot. I guess all the decisions we've taken over the years is kind of getting us here. One of the things that certainly had made sense was being very intent to, listening to what people wanted us for. So what was the problem that we're solving for them? So so basically, in the very beginning, our whole idea was, let's just try and get around the banks. So whenever someone was moving money between countries, the bank's trying to take a cut. So how do we get around the banks? And we should start with that. So we had a beautiful hack for that, basically, to cheat the system. And kind of people started saving money using Wise. But then over the years, it was really listening to what they were telling us. So what worked, what they wanted more of, what didn't work, what was broken, what needed fixing. So if I look back over the years, probably the biggest thing was all these kind of micro decisions of what did people want us to do? And then, of course, there's a little bit of filtering you need to do there, because otherwise we would have been just doing crypto all day long. But now we're doing something else useful.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the name change, that indicates the company's move from remittances, money transfers, to a much broader offering. So what are the next areas that your customers are asking you to move into?
And it's even easier, so it's quite useful to look back of how this, so Wise today does a few things, but the way it works, it's not like we we sit up in a room and we think of, what are the strategically interesting things to do next? And or look at what alleged competition does. So we actually, when we look back, it's more about, again, what people asked us to do. So you mentioned the Wise account. Now we store billions of euros for our customers on the Wise account. So it feels like a bank account. It does international banking better than anything else. But it was actually not conceived as such. It was conceived as we kind of fix the problem for our customers, how to move their money from one country to pay someone else or themselves in a different country. But then businesses called us back and said, hey, we also want to receive money internationally. And because if we do with our bank, then either the sender's bank or the receiver's bank is going to take a cut, and we're still screwed. So we started fixing the problem of how do people receive money. And then, of course, once we worked that out and started giving account numbers all over the world for folks to receive locally, then we realized that we also need to store the money somewhere. So that's what gave rise to the multi-currency account. And then we had it got really clear that the people who are already storing or keeping money on Wise, they also sometimes need to spend it. Hence, we started issuing cards all around the world. And we did this like clever card where if you're in Brussels, it spends from your euro balance. If you're in the US, it spends from your dollar balance. And then after that, of course, we're now holding large amounts of customers' money. We're holding it in cash, but we could hold it in something else. So since a year ago, starting with our UK customers, they can hold their money invested in the world's largest companies through a stock index and still use it as money. So that's a bit of innovation of how do you hold money. But then if you add all of this together, we're kind of built an international version of how people and businesses use banking. But it hasn't come about as us sitting around and strategizing really.
It sounds like a very organic process. But when you think about, if you're able to give us all a hint, what the green shoots of demand are, what areas you might move into next, if you're letting people put their money into stock indexes, could that ever turn into individual stocks?
Less likely. It might be. It's there's others who do that pretty well. I mean, people who spend their time investing in stocks usually need something pretty powerful to do that, and there's good startups working on that problem. We're more thinking of what is the asset that you hold. So where you I think what people maybe don't realize is when they hold their money at the bank isn't holding this as money. They're giving it out as mortgages to other people or in business loans. So you're really holding mortgages and business loans. Is that the asset class that you're interested in or not? And I think there's a few very wide-ranging places to hold money, but it's a very different angle than, hey, I'm interested in betting on a stock or investing in a certain company.
I think it's definitely, the topic, I think, of our chat is disrupting legacy industries. On the one hand, you've been disrupting the money transfer industry. There have been other startups that have sprung up in similar areas. Many of the challenger banks are also starting to offer money transfer products. How do you think about competition in the sector, and does it worry you at all?
Well, when we think about competition, we think about the problem that we're solving. So we calculate, because we know how much people spend or how much the banks charge in those hidden exchange rates, we can kind of reverse engineer how much they're saving using Wise. And that's now more than €1 billion a year. So this feels like a time to congratulate ourselves that fantastic, we save our customers €1 billion a year. €1 billion is an enormous number. But then you kind of go a bit further and you realize that banks are still charging something around 180 billion euros in those hidden markups. So we kind of nibbled away. The more tech savvier, the faster adopters, they're saving a ton of money, but in the wide world, the problem is still quite unsolved. So when we think about competition, really is mostly how do we help more people use Wise, and at the moment they're using their banks. What we don't believe is that everyone in the world who needs to do an international transfer will start using Wise. I think that's not what needs to happen either. So we're getting, with our platform offering, with the Wise platform offering, we're actually bringing the same experience that people can get on our apps to the banks. Because really, there shouldn't be any reason that they leave from the bank to use us. And the only reason they would be doing that is if our service is better than the banks, then obviously, the banks are thinking, how do we avoid that from happening? How do we match the experience that they would get outside of our apps? and we now have a way how to bring that experience back into the bank's app, so banks can offer the same Wise experience to their customers from within their app. So that's what Monzo is doing in the UK. That's what N26, the challenger names are doing in Europe. There's now more than a few dozen banks around the world who's bringing us to their customers within their apps. And I think that's actually, in the long run, it's probably a better model.
Shifting slightly, I wanted to move to a different topic. It's been a busy last 12 months, including your direct listing in London last July. There's a lot of talk about how Europe's exchanges can keep more of their companies regionally. At the same time, there are worries, do the local institutional investors understand these kinds of companies? And so I'm just wondering, from your own experience, do you feel like you've been fairly understood trading in London?
We will find out, I think, in the longer term. I think in the short experience is that the capital markets are relatively quite global. So those whose job is to invest money, so pension funds and other like hedge funds around the world whose job is to invest money, they will find access to all the large markets around the world. I think for like retail customers, it's a little harder. So usually the US shares are maybe more accessible globally than those smaller exchanges, whether it's Amsterdam or Stockholm or London. But so far, our experience has been positive with listing in London through the direct listing. The direct listing was a pretty interesting experience. I think people are potentially sometimes over dramatizing an IPO, where it could just be the moment where your shares start trading. In our case, we had done lots of secondary share sales in the past, so it was just kind of more orchestrating better through better infrastructure. But totally, these exchanges work. So London works. I think the European ones do as well.
And again, I think everyone is thinking through what's going on in markets right now. Tech stocks are down, like plunging. So I was curious, how do you think about that, and how long do you think this lasts?
I think this is going to be a really tricky time now for companies who are reliant on investment. So those who are not sustainable. Again, either by luck or foresight, about 5-6 years ago, Wise became a sustainable, financially profitable company. We realized that if we want to disrupt the way international banking works, we kind of need to be around for a very long time because it's a big problem. And the way to be around for a very long time, you really need to be sustainable. So we chose to be like moderately profitable from 5 years ago. And therefore, we're thankfully more isolated from what's happening in the capital markets. But of course, those who are relying on a lot of external capital, they will unfortunately struggle for a while. I think there's a silver lining. We will have stronger companies because those who are going to survive, they will be sustainable because they're going to be stronger, profitable companies.
Shifting to another very current topic, companies like yours have been very important around the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the financial sanctions that have come around that, people trying to move money in, trying to move money out. You've been involved on, both sides have impacted you, like recently suspended accounts in Russia. Do you think that's it for Wise in Russia, or you'll ever go back?
It's hard to say how the world will evolve. For us, actually the very inspiring part is when the war broke out, our biggest concern was how do we keep money flowing to Ukraine. So it was even less about like blocking Russia, but more on how do we get money to the people who need it. And for a while, we were probably one of the few ways how the charities and how people in Ukraine could get funding internationally. And it also kind of raised lots of interesting problems around transparency, as in some companies were wanting to make a statement that, hey, we'll make transfers free to Ukraine, but then marking up the exchange rate pretty horribly. And this is just, in these situations, just really awful to see.
Yeah, do you feel like that was a big issue? I know you took steps to make it easier to transfer money to refugees, but do you feel like some of your competitors were not as even-handed?
I mean, this is, by the way, a time where there's financial uncertainty. Then these hidden markups always go up, and for us, like fighting for transparency, this is just a bit sad to see that like innocent people and those who are usually more in need are going to be the hardest hit by the way that the standards by which the financial services operate.
Maybe to end on one last hot topic, everyone is also curious what happens with the world of Web3 and crypto. Currently Wise doesn't accept cryptocurrencies. Do you think that might change at some point?
I think we're still, and it's fascinating, I've been asked this question for years and years now, and I'm very excited about that technology. And we're just looking for a use case. Like, we're looking for the problem that we can solve with it. But there's interesting experiments going around all around the world, so space to watch for sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Conversation. Thanks, everyone.